Good afternoon, Mets fans, and welcome to a Wednesday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and it pains me to do this today and talk about last night's game where we saw Jacob deGrom show that he's a human being after all, and he is beatable, and the Minnesota Twins did that last night. Jumped on deGrom, ended both his scoreless inning streak and his consecutive quality start streak. So in the record books, at the top of that list, Mr. deGrom will be tied with Bob Gibson, which I've said from the beginning, it's good company to have. I want to talk about the game last night. I want to talk about the Mets' approach. I want to talk about the bullpen, and I want to talk about a couple of things peripheral to that heading into tonight's series ender with the Twins. So during the game last night, Mets Twitter was Mets Twittering, as only Mets Twitter can do, surmising that deGrom's struggles were, of course, the result of Travis d'Arnaud being behind the plate, which, I'm sorry, is just laughable, and which, after the game, and as I was watching this unfold on Twitter, after the game, I'm thinking, like, Jake's going to come right out and own it, and of course he did. He could have made excuses, right? But we know that that's not who Jacob deGrom is. Could his ineffectiveness been a result of another catcher being behind the plate? Possibly. Could it have been due to the fact that the game was delayed 25 minutes at the start for rain that didn't actually come? Perhaps. But the bottom line is deGrom owned it and said, look, this is on me. And again, this is what we've come to expect from him. He's that kind of guy. He's that kind of player, that kind of human being. And I for one, applaud him for that. He doesn't fall into the trap that a lot of professional athletes fall under, where they blame everybody else but themselves. So I got to say kudos to Jake for that, and just tip my cap to him for owning the fact that, hey, he had a stinker. It's going to happen. I'm not worried at all about deGrom going forward. He'll be perfectly fine. It happens. He wasn't going to win every game. It's just ironic that the Mets actually scored some runs last night and have been scoring this year, averaging over 5 runs per game. But Jake gave up 6, and it happens. What are you going to do? He raised his season ERA to over 3 now. So it is what it is. It's baseball. The bigger and more alarming fact for me is that the Mets bullpen continues to let teams pile on runs. And, this was the same thing on Sunday with the Nats, where the Mets made that into a game. They were trailing 12-1, and they ended up losing by, I think, 12-9 on Sunday. Last night, really, they claw back to within bailing Jake out, getting him out of that hole that he had dug for himself, the 6 runs. But, the Mets bullpen didn't do any favors to anybody. They allowed, Lugo allowed a run, Gazelman allowed 3, albeit unearned. I don't agree with them being unearned because he's the one who threw the pitch that was hit out of the park. Yes, it happened after Alonso's error, but whatever. 3 unearned for him. Vargas came in and looked horrendous in the 9th inning, giving up 4 runs on top of the piling on. I want to talk about Vargas in a little bit, but the only reliever who was unscathed last night was Luis Avilan, who posted a scoreless frame. So, the Mets bullpen has to do a better job of closing the door a little bit. Even though they're trailing, this offense, as it's constructed now and as it's performing now, it's proven that it's not out of any games. It's an offense that can survive and claw back into a game over the course of a couple of innings. That's what they did last night. They made it a contest. They had close to the tying run at the plate in the bottom of the 9th. So this is on the Mets bullpen more so than deGrom for me, if I'm going to really get mad at anybody. And the cautious optimism I've had all season continues to grow that air of caution, because this bullpen has got to figure out how to lock some stuff down and put up scoreless frames. and they haven't been able to do that. And you can blame Mickey Callaway. It's easy to do, and I'm right on board with that. Mickey's got to do a better job of mixing things up a little bit. But, at the same time, you got to have Lugo and Gazelman be lockdown relievers. It can't just be Edwin Diaz and, to a lesser extent, Jeurys Familia and Justin Wilson that are the quality relievers. The whole bullpen has to be better. So bullpen gets the GOAT for me for last night's game. Game balls go out to, once again, Pete Alonso, who hits not one but 2 home runs last night. Alonso gets himself a game ball, as does Michael Conforto, another great night at the plate. Again, continuing to see these positive signs from the offense is great. And unfortunately, it wasn't enough last night, and the Mets fall to 6-4 on the season. With DeGrom going only 4 innings last night, it's going to be important for Noah Syndergaard, who starts tonight's game, to go at least 6 innings, and I'd like to see him go 7 and maybe even 8. And he hasn't done it yet this season, but look, he closed out last season with back-to-back complete games. And so it's not out of the question that Syndergaard can do exactly that. He just needs to do it tonight. He needs to figure out how to put this game together in a way that he can pitch to contact early, not run up the pitch count early, and keep the Mets in the game, because the Mets, as I said, have shown a resiliency on the offensive side of the ball. A couple of other positive signs last night. Brandon Nimmo had a couple of good at-bats, including his first home run of the season. Ahmed Rosario had a real good night at the plate. His 9th inning at-bat notwithstanding. Bad decision to swing at that first pitch against a reliever who'd thrown 7 consecutive balls out of the strike zone. And doing that with the bases loaded, even more of a head-scratcher. But, he's not going to go 4 for 4. What did he go, 3 for 4 last night? You can't get on him for that too much, but he's got to be a little bit more disciplined at the plate. 2 other quick points. One, D'Arnaud, I mentioned already, caught last night's game, his first game behind the plate in over a year. Looked kind of overmatched at the plate batting, but it's good for him to get it under his belt. Again, Mets Twitter was really relentless about D'Arnaud last night. He's on the team. He's going to have to play. He is the backup catcher. Would you rather have Tomas Nido? Again, Mets Twitter really being reactionary to everything. Had D'Arnaud had a home run last night and maybe had 2 other hits or something, I don't know that the vitriol would be quite what it is about his performance in the game last night. So I have a bit of a problem with Mets Twitter and the way that they react to that. Calling for a guy like Tomas Nido, who I think we've all seen cannot hit the ball to save his life at this point in his career. So the talk about Nido over D'Arnaud, I don't quite know where that's going and what's happening with that. So Mets Twitter needs to get their act together and stop reacting to everything the way they do, and stop asking for things that are unreasonable. That's unreasonable to get on D'Arnaud for last night and for DeGrom's performance. So, final point I want to make today is the home runs that are being hit out of not just Citi Field but across baseball. I think at least a half dozen times during the broadcast, Ron Darling pulled a Keith Hernandez and was like groaning on the air at the way that balls are flying out of Citi Field on a cold, misty, rainy night in April. Balls were flying out of Citi Field like it was the middle of the summer, and that's scary for pitchers across the league. Like this should not be happening. And yes, it's on pitchers to make better pitches, no question about that. But solid contact doesn't always lead to a home run. At least it shouldn't. And it seems like that's what happens every time anybody squares up a ball. It's going to leave the yard. And I don't like that brand of baseball. I enjoyed the Mets' first couple of games where they didn't hit home runs and they still scored a bunch of runs. Hitting the ball the other way, doing the small things that teams need to do to drive in runs and to make an offense fun to watch. I've said it a bunch of times that the home run, walk, strikeout brand of baseball that MLB is really becoming is boring. and they can talk about pace of play all they want and instituting pitch clocks and other rules and stuff, but the game has to get back to what it used to be and implement more diverse offenses as opposed to everybody just relying on the long ball all the time. It's annoying, and I don't know if it's a juiced ball or whatever it is, but something needs to change, and baseball needs to get back to its roots. And the game is exciting, and it is fun. And even for people that don't love baseball, you can't tell me that as a casual observer, you can't sit in front of a TV and watch a guy like Jose Reyes in his prime smack a ball into the gap in the outfield and race around the bases and get himself a triple, or score on a double from first base. That's exciting. That's what makes baseball fun. And until baseball gets back to that, they can talk about all these other things as much as they want to, but the game is going to be boring for the casual fan if all they're watching is pitchers struggle to find the plate, batters swinging at bad pitches, and every 3 or 4 at-bats, someone squaring up a ball and hitting a home run and trotting slowly around the bases. Sorry, but that's not fun. So, that's going to wrap it up for today. I will try to be back tomorrow. I don't know that I'm going to be able to. I'm going to be out of town. I don't know how much time I'll have in my own car tomorrow, so it's a question mark as to whether I'll be able to recap tonight's game. If I can, I will. If I cannot, I will be back on Friday morning to recap tonight's game, as well as Thursday's game. So, until then, I thank you for watching. I appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Mr_Met. And as always, let's go Mets.